Hank in Texas says, "Why can't I take the final
Hi, Dave.
step to atheism?" Hi, Hank. You're on with
Hank.
Jenna and Dave.
Hey, Hank.
Is it Jenna? Did I get that right?
Jenna, yes, sir.
What was the question?
Okay. I try to remember my wife's name most of the time, but at my age, it can be difficult.
Awesome. Okay. So what do you want to call about?
Guys, you kind of got the gist of it. I started out being raised in a Christian home also. And in my late teens, early 20s, I struggled when I, came to reading the Bible and looking at it and saying, what it says is not seem to be what I'm being taught. And it was a traumatic experience, as I think it is for a lot of people, to back away from that. Yeah. But in the end, when it comes down to it, there seems to be one thing that is not associated with the physical, at least that I've really looked into, because this is the thing that confuses me the most. So that's why I called to get your thoughts on it. And that is consciousness. It doesn't seem to be associated with anything physical, like anything in the mind that they found, at least to this point, that says, oh, this is consciousness. This is what lets you know that you are you.
Isn't that fascinating?
So what are your thoughts on it?
Dave, you want to go first?
It is fascinating.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is fascinating because it's something that I honestly understand how we know who we are, and we're aware of ourselves, and that self-awareness that some people have more than others, obviously. But it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make an argument for or against a God of any kind. It is just simply something that we're still coming to understand as science progresses, as we learn more about the human body, about the human mind. I mean, I think we can recognize that there's advances being made all the time, that we're learning more and more about who we are and how we operate and what our bodies and minds are capable of. The human consciousness is one thing that I think is like Jenna said, it is fascinating. But what that says or doesn't say about a God, to me, that's not part of the conversation.
Yeah. So, do you want to respond to that, or do you want to hear my thoughts first? Up to you, Hank.
No, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So yeah, exactly what he said. I think when I find something, a topic like that I'm like, oh my God, this just doesn't make sense, I try to look into it as far as I can. And if it becomes like really, really important to me and I just can't figure it out, I maybe become a scientist that's looking into consciousness, because the fact is that it doesn't look like we have many answers about why consciousness, it's very hard to describe, and I haven't found much on it. And I find that a fascinating topic. And so that's one of the reasons that I want to look into science in several different areas. It's mind blowing to me. But the thing is, just because I can't figure it out, or I don't know, or I can't find the answers, doesn't mean that I can just fill in the blank with any kind of assumption about what must be. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And I'm not trying to say that it proves there's a God or anything. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to say that seems to be the one thing that, and I also realize that we're learning things all the time, and maybe something will come up. But I can't, it's still, to me, it's that one thing that says this doesn't appear to be something that's physical like everything else. So if I have a consciousness, to some extent, it kind of seems above the physical or supernatural or something. So if I'm thinking that, and I'm not saying it's true, I'm just saying I can't get away from, if I'm thinking that, where did that come from? And maybe there is something about the supernatural that can't be explained. I just don't understand. Or maybe we'll find out someday that what part of the brain does tell us this is you and you are aware of who you are.
So when you say things like something above what's the physical or supernatural, right? Those sound like terms that I've heard in church and other places. And it sounds, so when you hear those terms over and over and over again, I think that, and this could be wrong, but I think that kind of gets buried in your subconscious to where it just kind of becomes like foundational, something that you just know without actually having to do the work of actually verifying. So when you use terms like above or supernatural, help me analyze this. What are you actually literally saying when you use those words? Because that helped me, is really investigating the terminology down to the T, helped me kind of get over the concept that I just think those are kind of fluffy words, you know?
Well, maybe I should try to say, without being argumentative, I am aware the word supernatural sounds like, well, you're leaving science or something. But I'm also trying to say I am open to the possibility there is something besides the physical. I'm not saying we've shown that or that they're certainly haven't proved it or anything, and it doesn't look like there is.
Well, I mean, there's conceptual ideas. Their numbers are conceptual. You know, there are things other than the physical, but are we going to assume that there's like a physical evidence of the number 4? No, I mean, it's something that we've called to have communication with each other, to relay what we're trying to say to one another. I don't think that means that it actually exists. So when you say supernatural, what are you saying? Because I can describe the number 4. I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But what is supernatural? What does that mean?
Well, I'm just saying that the number 4 exists because we make it in our mind. I mean, there's a location in our brain that identifies with the number 4.
So what am I identifying with the word supernatural?
I just use that as a term that I don't know how to say. They haven't.
I think on the right track. I think he's on the right track.
Yeah, I think what Jenna meant when you say the word supernatural is it's part of your vocabulary that you learned as a Christian or that you learned in church or that you kind of grew up with it. We all do. I mean, by definition, the word supernatural means beyond natural. It's beyond the natural explanation of things.
I could really like him to investigate in his own mind what that actually means. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because it sounds like you're on the right track when you say, well, I don't really know. That sounds right. Do you know? Do you actually know what you're saying to me when you say that something is supernatural?
Maybe supernatural is not the right word. I'm using that word to say there's been no identification of the consciousness with something physical.
So what does that mean?
Well, that means that when we think about things, like when we laugh, when we talk about things, there are places in our brain that scientists look at and say, oh, that's how you identify faces, things like that. There's no place in the brain that scientists have looked at, researchers have looked at and identified, and somehow come up with, this is how you know you're who you are, that you're alive, that you're aware of yourself. And I think that would be difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think that's going to be difficult because it's almost like a vague concept itself to some extent, seems like.
Well, let me ask you this, Hank. You kind of started the call by saying that issue of consciousness and the things we don't understand about it are kind of keeping you lingering in the ideology or the mindset of there must be something out there, there must be a God of some kind. Is that what I heard you saying in some way?
To some extent, I guess if you want to call it God, find something that is not identified or controlled or by physical.
So why would we assume it
atoms.
exists?
I'm not assuming
Oh,
that
okay.
anything
So
exists.
you don't
You're
think
just
it exists?
asking the question. I'm with you, Hank. I kind of, like when we started, we all said, yeah, that's a fascinating concept, the consciousness and things like that. But those ideas and those questions that we don't have answers for right now, or that I don't understand because I'm not that sharp, is those kind of questions don't keep me from letting go of the idea of God, because I don't see anything in my understanding of God. In all those years I was a Christian, there was certainly nothing in the Bible that identified those things or that explained those things. I mean, in the Bible, they thought they didn't even know that how the universe worked, and the sun that we rotated, the sun rotated around. They thought the earth was flat. They didn't know how germs worked. They didn't know anything. And if there was some God consciousness in the mix there, way back when men were writing down the words that became the Bible, I think they would have put that in there, or they should have. But Jesus thought, an epileptic had a demon, and so those kind of things. So I don't let those kind of questions keep me hanging on to some idea of God or Christianity just because I don't have the answer, therefore God. I mean, those are the kind of things that get us in trouble when we come to questions that we have that we don't have answers for, and then we fill in the blank with some kind of a God.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that, Dave. I follow.
I know you're not.
Same path.
I know you're not. Go ahead.
I am only saying that everything else that I can think of, even if I don't understand it, everything else I can see where, yeah, this could be, say, part of how the brain works or something like that. I don't see how this can be part of how the brain works. Maybe
so what does that mean?
Maybe we'll find that it is.
What does that mean then, if we can't find that?
If that is true, I'm not saying it is. Mm-hmm. I'm saying if that is true, to me, that brings in the question of, is there something besides the physical?
And what if it's not true? What if we just haven't found it yet?
Then it's not.
So where are we then on that? Do we assume
when I have that question?
So do we assume that it is, or do we assume that it isn't, or do we just stop and say, well, we don't know yet?
I stop and say, I don't know yet, but it's something that I can't explain. And it's not like other things that I can't explain, where I can't explain it, but I can see where it could be explained at some point. I don't see how this can be explained at some point.
I think it can. I think we'll understand it. I think it's in the category of I don't know, and we don't know yet, but information is coming. And I don't have to put that in the category of God or not God. I just put that in the category of humans are learning more about ourselves all the time. And so it's not something that hangs me up. And so I would just encourage you to keep asking good, honest questions like that and keep an open mind.
I agree.
That's what
I don't think
that's what you're doing
about it. I just think
good.
It's something that hey, it before I take that final step of saying no, there is no supernatural of any kind, I'm open to how are we ever going to explain this?
Well, let me say, for my part, I don't say there's no supernatural of any kind. I say I don't believe there is, and I don't see any evidence for it, but I'm open to evidence. If someone's got it, I'd love to hear it. I don't have to make a declaration of there's no God. And a lot of people misunderstand the term atheist and try to make us define that by us saying, I believe there's no God. That's not what we're saying. I'm not declaring there's no God. I'm saying that in my response to your declaration of there is a God, I'm saying I don't see enough evidence for it. And so I don't have to make
Well,
that declaration.
Would you say that evidence proves something?
Yeah, I think that's what evidence means.
I don't think that evidence proves something. We have evidence. If you have enough evidence, then you can say, based on what we know right now, there's no other explanation that we have right now. And I know that's the way science works. Science never says anything is proved. They just say the preponderance of evidence says this is the way it is.
And if different evidence, if something else comes along, if something else comes along better, then we'll change our mind on that. The difference with that in religion is religion makes the declaration without evidence and won't change their mind when evidence.
Actually, that's a good point. That's a good point. Just having evidence, it can be bad evidence, and it can also be not enough evidence.
And we change our mind, based upon better evidence.
I'm just saying we have evidence of some things that are not conclusive. I mean, it looks like this, but we're a long ways from determining that that's what this evidence points to. And that's what I'm saying about consciousness.
Right.
I'm not saying that it proves anything. I just say I think it is evidence that there might be something out there.
Well, I think we agree on some things. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, thank you for your call, Hank. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Hank. Thank you. And I keep asking, keep investigating.
Asking questions.
I mean, I think that was an honest call. I like.
Yeah. He's searching. He's looking.
Yeah.
He's asking questions.